Hello. So, what do we mean when we talk about technology? What is it good for? What are some of the ways to approach it? And what are some things that we can look for, places we can look for inspiration? Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Hi, good morning. I'm Jason. I'm a self-employed contractor, and I work with a consultant. I work with Balboa Park Online Collaborative. I have a really geeky company name. Talk to me about it afterward. And what we do at Balboa Park Online Collaborative, we make fun things. We work with you to make fun things. And what do I mean by making fun things? Well, how many people have been to MOPA to see the new gallery? Yes? Hey! So we worked on this mirror wall called Self-Reflection. It's actually just a webcam, but each pixel is being replaced by one of 896 portraits of people from the 7 Billion Others photography project. And you should really go check it out. We also worked with the Model Railroad Museum with Pauline Anthony there on the Centennial Railway Garden, where we had an iPad quiz where you took the quiz and you pressed a button at the end of it and it lit up the model LED lights and played sounds, stars, fountains, fun things like that. And I'm going to skip the video because I'm going to try to talk quickly and go through more stuff. We also worked for an accessible video experience for people who couldn't take the California Tower tour. Down at the bottom, I don't know if you've been to the Museum of Man recently, but since the tour opened, we worked with them and did a lot of video interviews and also hooked up a giant 80-inch curved screen, 4K to 4K video feeds that are up at the top of the tower in all the cardinal directions, and you can use an iPad to control which direction you're looking at. And I'm going to skip that video as well. And we also do a lot of other things, everything from audio tours to touch screens galore around the park. If it's technology related, even sometimes IT related, usually Balboa Park Online Collaborative, can't speak this morning. Balboa Park Online Collaborative is involved. Drew is another friendly person from Balboa Park Online Collaborative. And websites, yes. So we're involved with balboapark.org and several other things like that. So we use technology to creatively solve problems. We work with our clients, the museums and cultural institutions, and we work to figure out what their problem is, and we put together a design, run it past them, get approval and sign off on those designs, and then polish the design, get it so that we have everything mapped out, and then we start building, and as we're building, we're constantly getting feedback. And I'm sure that you're thinking, okay, Jason, you're talking about this design and development project for all these technology projects that are in gallery and out in the museums. What's the rule book? What are the rules that I should follow? I'm going to take notes and everything. No, there's no real rule book for this. There's no rules. Everybody is figuring things out. It's kind of the Wild West, and everybody is experimenting. And as Robert was just saying, just test things out. It doesn't have to be super high fidelity. Test it out and iterate as quickly as you can. So that said, there are 3 general guidelines that I'm going to try to go over today. One is to know what's possible. You don't have to understand how to do everything and what the technology is and how to develop in it, but just know what's out there so that you know the kind of questions to ask. And second of all, try to keep it simple. Third of all, remember that technology is the means. It's not the end of it. So, know what's possible. You don't have to know how to do it, but you just need to know what you can do. And in thinking of this, I like to think of 3 components that you can kind of Voltron together when you're working on in-gallery stuff. The first thing is controllers, which are kind of the brains of the operation, and then you have sensors, which are ways that you get information about the environment, and then actuators, which are ways that you act or talk back to people and the environment. So first, let's talk about controllers. It used to be in the old days that you had to print circuit boards, custom circuit boards for any kind of thing that you were doing, or wire a breadboard or something like that. And now they're actually these prototyping kits. Who here has heard of Arduino? Probably, okay, a fair number of people. It's an open source standard circuit that has a tiny little chip brain on it, and it costs about 20 bucks. And it's open source, so tons of manufacturers manufacture. You can get it for about 20 bucks. For about 30, 35, 40 bucks, you can get something called a Raspberry Pi, which is a full Linux computer. And you can hook it up to monitors and play videos and all sorts of things. And then you've also got smartphones. Smartphones are really capable. You can use them for everything for augmented reality kind of projects. And moving on to more and more powerful things, you've got Mac Minis or Intel NUCs, which are these tiny little computers. And if you really need horsepower, like on the Tower View project, you can use a full desktop computer that's hidden in the cabinet underneath it. And we talked about Arduino. There's a woman named Miriam Langer. She goes by the Twitter handle Arduino Girl. She works at New Mexico Highlands University. And she has a lot of great resources on approaching a technology project. What are your needs? And then what are the microcontrollers that are best for you? And so these links are in the slides, which I'll be sharing afterward. As you're thinking about microcontrollers, think about how do you program them. I just talked a bunch about the hardware, but think about the software. And there are a bunch of different programming languages that are out there. You'll hear things like Python and JavaScript, C++. These programming languages all have different advantages. The biggest thing to consider is the difference between a scripting language and a compiled language. Compiled languages take more time to develop and usually a lot more expertise, but they usually run faster on the end product. A scripting language is something that allows you to iterate really quickly and test out a bunch of ideas. So again, consider the trade-offs. If you're working with something with battery power, you're going to have to consider things like that. So let's move on to sensors. We talked about controllers, sensors. I'm guessing everybody in the room has a smartphone. What do you think are the sensors that your smartphone has? What are the ways that your smartphone gets information about the world?
Bluetooth.
Okay, Bluetooth, GPS, camera,
Infrared.
Infrared. Okay, so you've got a light sensor, a proximity sensor, so that the screen turns off when you hold it up next to your face, so that you don't actually match buttons when you're talking on the phone. You've got a touch screen. The screen is the biggest thing that's on there. Accelerometer that tells which way you're holding it, a magnetometer or compass. You've got a microphone so that you can talk to it or make loud sounds. It can sense that. The antennas for RFID or NFC for things like Apple Pay, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, actual physical buttons, and of course the cameras. So the question now, if you're thinking about sensors, is what do you actually want to detect? And there are many, many ways to do this. So for example, if we're thinking about proximity, you want to test how close somebody is to something. You could use GPS. You could use an ultrasonic sensor, which is one of those kind of distance sensors. This is one on a LEGO Mindstorms kit. You could use computer vision. This is actually really exciting. With a webcam, there are open source libraries that let you identify things and movement within a video image really easily. It's all open source in their libraries. You can just kind of plug and play and detect, count the number of people or visitors that are in a space within a certain area. A lot of commercial products out there that do this, and a lot of free software that does this as well. There's Bluetooth iBeacons, which I'm not going to talk about because Robert already explained these quite a bit. Infrared reflection, which is very similar to the web camera kind of stuff, but where it's shining out a structured light pattern of infrared and then making a 3D model of the room based on the distortion of that pattern. And that's how the Kinect works. NFC, RFID, your proximity cards that get you into buildings, and also Apple Pay work on the same technology, which is actually built into your phones, and most people don't really use it for that much. And then your touchpad on your laptop is working off a principle called conductive capacitance, which is where there's an electrical field and it senses the distortion in that electrical field based on organic matter. And you can make something that can detect those kind of distortions with a pizza box and aluminum foil hooked up to an electrical circuit. And there's free software that will do that. In fact, Disney has done a lot of interesting things with that, which I'll talk about later. So again, what do you want to detect? There are a million ways to do it. Try to focus on what you're trying to do and consult somebody who's kind of a technology guru who can help you figure out what the best way to work with it is, because there are many ways to skin the cat. So we talked about sensors. Let's go back to the smartphone and talk about actuators. What are the ways that the smartphone talks to the world, to you? Anyone? Everybody's so excited this morning. Yes, pictures. So the screen is a huge way. You're getting a lot of feedback from the screen. But also it can vibrate. It can make sounds. It can talk to networks. You've got camera flash. People use their phones as flashlights all the time. Motor vibration, speaker, yes, lots of things. And we talked about the screen. There's so many screens out there. You're making content. If you're making it for screens, you have to think, is it going to adapt fluidly to all these different layouts, or am I going to constrain it to just an iPad? Is it just going to be in gallery, or are you going to make that available on the web to people after or at the same time? And then think beyond screens. We've got things like virtual reality. Google has Google Cardboard, where they're making field trips inside museums that are 360 degrees, where people put a smartphone inside a little cardboard Viewmaster kind of thing, and they can take a virtual tour of places like the Himalayas. Or augmented reality, where people still can see the outside world, but there's digital information laid on top of it, and they see on their table a Minecraft model that they can manipulate. Or things that don't even have screens. How many people have a Jawbone or some kind of fitness tracker? The Jawbone has an alarm clock in it, and it'll vibrate and wake you up in the morning when you're in a lighter stage of sleep. Siri, when you talk to Siri, you're not looking at a screen necessarily, you're just telling it to respond to a text message. Or even robots, where their facial expression is a way of interacting with you. Lots and lots of possibilities. Think of what the senses are of human beings. And it's more than 5 senses. And museums have been working without all this modern technology on multi-sensory experiences for a long time. So you have a lot of expertise in this. Try to think of how people will respond. And I've talked about all this stuff, so now let's try to keep it simple, because the first temptation of everybody in every museum is, yes. They're like, we've got all this great stuff, let's put it all into one project. No, let's start with one simple thing. Try to figure out what you're going to do and then build up from there. Because A, you don't have the budget. You're museums. And B, you want to ship something in a reasonable amount of time. So remember, technology, again, is the means. It's not the ends. There are so many times where we work with a museum, and the first thing that they say to us is, I've got this great new technology that I just invested a lot of money in. Let's do something cool with it. And instead, what you should be asking is, what is your content? What are your collections? What are the things that you have? What are the challenges and what are the goals that you want to work towards? And try to build something from that. And you might not need an iPad. You might be able to do it with paper and interesting activities, which I realize is kind of heretical to say at a technology workshop, to say, hey, you don't need to use technology, but it's true. So think about what technology is good for. What can you automate? What are things that are really difficult for a human to do versus software? And what are things that are difficult for software to do that a human can do really easily and quickly? And where can you layer on unexpected magic? Okay, I'm going to geek out for a moment here. Who here has seen the Skin and Bones app from Smithsonian? Anyone? Okay, yes. Look this up online afterward. It's super cool. They took the Bone Hall in the Smithsonian's Natural History Museum, which is a collection of bones from the 1880s. And they built an augmented reality app so that you can hold an iPad up and look at the bones, and you see the animal overlaid on top of the bones. The animal will interact, and you can like hold out your hand, and a little bat will crawl onto your hand, other things. It's really nifty. They also found out that you could print out a photo of the skeletons from the hall and hold the iPad over it and see it. So there you've got this thing that was designed for in-gallery use, but now you can use it anywhere around the country if somebody has a photograph of skeletons from the Bone Hall. And so again, think of how to bring people together and bring people together with your collections outside, before and after their visit. This is the Cooper Hewitt Museum, another thing to check out. They have a pen that you get when you check in, and then you have to return it at the end of the day. But you can interact with exhibits and draw on stuff and design with one end, and then turn it around to the eraser side and touch this little touch spot next to any of these exhibits, and it'll collect it. It'll basically add it to a little virtual bag that you have that's collecting all of your stuff that you really liked during the exhibit. And when you leave, you get a website URL that gives you your personal web page of your curated collection of the things that you really liked in the museum exhibits. And as you're thinking about technology, think, why do we do this way? Why are we kind of, if there's something that doesn't make sense about the way that your museum operates, sometimes technology can help if you just ask why, if you question assumptions. And here's a shameless plug, BPOC can help you with this. We do something called digital strategy engagements where we do capacity building assessments and touch point mapping. So talk to me afterward if you're interested in that. But there's lots of open frameworks that are standard for working with this. So this is what I've talked about. Again, know the possibilities. Try to keep it simple. Remember that technology is just the means, not the ends. And here are three slides really quickly of some resources where you can get some inspiration. The Make magazine blog has a lot of quick weekend projects and interesting technology things that can give you ideas. The Creators Project from Intel and Vice magazine has a lot of really inspiring installation art and art projects that can give you ideas. Disney has a research arm. They partner with universities around the world, Zurich and Carnegie Mellon and other places like that, and they publish papers and open up all of the stuff that they've found. And they've done some really interesting things. This is a project called Touche, where they turned plants into touch sensors, and they figured out ways to fingerprint somebody's touch signature by the way that they were holding a doorknob, so they could tell who was entering a room before they entered the room. So lots of really cool stuff, DisneyResearch.com. And then finally, conferences, not just museum conferences like Museum of the Web and the Museum Computer Network, MCM, but Instant is an installation art conference that's in Minneapolis. Solid just happened the other weekend. It's about Internet of Things and emerging technologies. Lots of great stuff. So that's all I have. Thank you very much.